Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
And welcome to the Mouthpiece Moment UFC 300 main card preview. It's one of the biggest cards in recent history. 30 years, 5 months, and 2 days since UFC 1. Pretty big deal. UFC 300 will include 3 title fights, so look out for those. There are 11 current or former undisputed UFC champions on this card. That's a pretty big deal. This will be headlined by light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira, who will be taking on former champion Jamahal Hill, who had to relinquish his title last year due to a ruptured Achilles. We'll talk about that in a bit. A few other highlights. Jim Miller will be taking on Bobby Green. Jim Miller is the only fighter in UFC history to have fought in UFC 100, UFC 200, and now UFC 300. Pretty fucking cool. Kayla Harrison will be making her debut. And she's going to drop down to the bantamweight division to take on Holly Holm. Aljamain Sterling is making his featherweight debut in the UFC to take on Calvin Kattar. Alexander Rakic, I think that's how you say his name. He's making his return to the octagon after a nasty knee injury back in May of 2022. He'll be taking on former champion Yuri Prochazka. That is going to be a banger, and I think that should have been, in my opinion, the opening fight on the main card, but I understand why they have it where it is. The card kicks off very first fight of the night, another banger. Davison Figueiredo takes on Cody Garbrandt. On this show, I'll be breaking down the 5 fights that are on the main card, pay-per-view portion of the card. I'll be making a separate video with my picks, so don't worry, you don't have to sit through this to hear picks. I know people were complaining about that. Go fuck yourself. Salud. The main card opener is a middleweight fight between Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage. A little bit of a background on Bo Nickal. He's undefeated at 5-0, 2-0 in the UFC. All 5 of his wins are finishes, all 5 in the first round, and 3 out of those 5 have ended in less than 1 minute. This guy is a finish machine. He's a beast. 3-time NCAA Division I national champion in wrestling at Penn State. He was a huge deal. I'm not really into wrestling, but he was a huge deal. A lot of hype coming off of him. He debuted with a ton of hype back at UFC 285 against Jamie Pickett. It only took him 2 minutes and 45 seconds to win by arm triangle. He landed an inadvertent knee to the groin of Jamie Pickett, which hurt Jamie. Looked over to the ref. The ref didn't see it, or he just didn't stop it. That led to a takedown. But if you really watch it, he was probably going to get taken down anyway. He got taken down and eventually got wrapped up in an arm triangle, got the tap. So Bo Nickal, he's just this amazing, strong wrestler with great grappling technique. Like once he gets there, it's pretty much the end of the fight. But he also has KO power. There was a lot of feints in the beginning of his fights, a lot of takedown feints as well, which is a smart idea if you have the type of wrestling background he has. Very well coached down at ATT. And his last fight was on July 8th of last year, in which he KO'd Valentin Woodburn in 38 seconds. That was kind of a weird fight. Valentin came up short notice. Thanks for stepping up, but he did get put to sleep. Cody Brundage is his opponent, 10-5 record, middleweight fighting out of Factory X. Two-time NCAA national qualifier in wrestling. He lost his debut by unanimous decision. His next 2 fights were impressive first-round finishes against 2 heavy-handed strikers. The dude can bang. He's more of a wrestler, but he can bang, and he has a really good chin. After those 2 fights, he lost his next 3, was in trouble of being let go, and then he won a fight in September of last year by disqualification because of an illegal elbow. It's pretty blatant. His last fight was in December of 2023. Took on undefeated prospect Zachary Reese, who was making his debut. Cody Brundage pretty much dominated him with top pressure, and then Reese was trying to lock in. I don't know if it was a triangle or an armbar, but Cody Brundage picked him up, slammed him, put him, and it was a slam KO. I think there was 3 that night. It was something crazy like that. So he came into the UFC as a wrestler, like I said, but 2 out of his 4 wins were by KO. He's got a strong chin. He gets cracked in pretty much every single fight. Somehow survives for the fights that he's won. He's pretty much had to survive something other than that fight against Reese. Real gamer, high level wrestling. That might be able to slow down Bo Nickal. He might have those set of skills that can at least slow down Bo Nickal. And Bo Nickal's so young in his career that he is ripe for. He's at a time where he could easily make mistakes that, let's say, a wily veteran wouldn't make, and that could lead to a loss here. He just might have that set of skills, and I'm talking about Cody Brundage. And he's also coached by Mark Montoya, who's an excellent game planner. So this could be it, and we could see Bo Nickal lose, finally. Who knows? Next fight is a lightweight fight between the number 1 ranked lightweight and former champion Charles Oliveira, and he's fighting Arman Tsarukyan, who's ranked number 4. Charles Oliveira, probably a recognizable name, former undisputed UFC lightweight champion. He debuted all the way back in 2010 in the UFC. Started out as a purely grappling-based submission artist, mostly a grappler. Didn't have much going on with his striking, but he's definitely cleaned up his striking in the last 5 years, I'd say, maybe even 8 years. And he's become someone who some consider an elite KO artist. He's been surprising his opponents lately with his power, and that has led to more submissions. So he's actually, it's cleaned up a lot of holes in his game he had early on, and it's working in his favor, obviously. His first 6 wins in the UFC were by submission, so that kind of tells you what was going on in the beginning of his career, or at least the beginning of his career. He is a UFC record holder for most finishes in the UFC, and that's at 20 finishes so far. He won the vacant lightweight title back in May of 2021 by TKO against Michael Chandler. And then he defended that title successfully twice, once against Dustin Poirier and once against Justin Gaethje. Both banger fights, both awesome. They both solidified how great he is. He was on an 11-fight win streak until he lost to the current champion in the division, Islam Makhachev, back in 2022. And only one of those 11 wins were by way of decision. He is a finish machine, pretty much kill or be killed style. He fought Beneil Dariush in June of last year. Tried to take Dariush down, but ended up falling to his back. Both guys were high-level grapplers, so we kind of figured that they would cancel each other out. And he threatened a few subs from his back. Once he was there, they somehow get up, and they get back to their feet. And Charles Oliveira lands a nasty head kick, and a flurry of hooks to follow leads to a TKO finish on the ground. I will say one thing, and again, going back to the kill or be killed thing, like Charles Oliveira takes a lot of strikes. He's got a super chin, but he takes a lot of strikes, and he seems to get dropped a lot. But because of his jiu-jitsu, there's sort of like a rope-a-dope type of situation going on where he'll fall, and people, other fighters, maybe 4 or 5 fights ago, would start to think, I got him. They dive in and fall right into a submission. So it's like if you drop Charles Oliveira, and this happened in the Justin Gaethje fight, if you drop Charles Oliveira, do not rush to jump in there because he's waiting to pull you into something. He's great off of his back. He's probably most comfortable off his back. Arman Tsarukyan entered the UFC only it was more recent, obviously, in 2019, super recent, much younger guy. He's on and that fight was super impressive because it was a short notice fight. It's his debut, and he fought current champion. At the time, he was not champion, but the current champ, Islam Makhachev. And he put Makhachev in some tough spots, put on a really good show, seemed to be pretty evenly matched as far as wrestling and grappling goes. And at the time, Islam had fought 6 fights in the UFC, and it was Arman's debut. He actually scored a takedown officially against Makhachev. It was super quick. Makhachev got up pretty quickly, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was just the fact that he was able to take down a Dagestani like that. And I remember watching the fight thinking, this guy is going to be great. This kid could be a champ easily when at some point in his career, because he was able to make Islam look human. And Islam didn't really hurt him at all, didn't really do much. It wasn't a lot of strikes landed, but he did get the victory. It was very close, though. Excuse me. After that, he won 5 fights in a row, it was after those 5 fights, he got a major step up in competition, and he fought the decision victory machine, Mateusz Gamrot, and sure enough, he lost a close decision to Gamrot. Boring. He won his next fight against a strong striker, Joaquim Silva. Arman for sure got cracked in that fight, was stumbling around a little bit, but he was able to survive with grappling and ended up getting a 3rd round finish with ground strikes. Then he got his next fight, which was his most recent fight back in December of 2023, fought Beneil Dariush in his first main event. So that was, pretty cool for a young guy. And the fight actually never got to the ground. It ended in the first round. Arman landed this overhand right, and then he threw his left knee up to try to land a standing knee against, he tried to land it on Beneil Dariush and missed the knee, and then just threw a right hand with his knee still in the air. And the right hand actually landed on Beneil. Beneil was pretty much out on his way down, finished with strikes. That's it. Arman has high-level grappling IQ. He has this quick twitch, and it's off the charts. If you really watch him close, like, he's got a very sharp, quick twitch that works in his favor, obviously. Heavy top game. His stand-up has gotten better and better after every fight, which is expected, but you can see the difference. I think this fight's going to be an interesting mix of striking, crafty grappling, if it needs to go there, but I do think there's going to be some major fireworks in round one. Both have KO power. Both have a great ground game. It looked at first like this was a weird matchup. I love it. I think it's great. I think they have skills that cancel each other out, and that might make it a straight-up dog fight. We'll see what happens. Looking forward to that. Next fight is the first title fight of the night, and it's a lightweight bout between number 2 ranked Justin Gaethje and number 2 featherweight ranked Max Holloway, and this is for the BMF title, the baddest motherfucker title. It's the first, I already said the first. I meant to say it's a legend versus legend fight, which I think is awesome. I just want to give you a quick history of the BMF title, like how it all started. And back on November 2nd, 2019, it was Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. And Jorge Masvidal it was pretty much a lopsided victory. They stopped the fight. It was a doctor stoppage. I believe it was between round 3 and 4, could be 4 and 5, but I mean, Masvidal was whooping his ass. Nate Diaz had a cut that was bleeding into his eye. They stopped the fight, and Jorge Masvidal became the inaugural BMF title holder. And then on July 29th of last year, Justin Gaethje was matched up against Dustin Poirier for the new version or the next version of the BMF title. Justin Gaethje landed a nasty head kick at the beginning of the second round, knocked out Dustin Poirier, shocked everybody, and now he'll be defending this title here at UFC 300. Justin the Highlight Gaethje, one of UFC fans' favorite fighters to watch. Can't say enough about the guy. It's fun. Every time he's fighting, everyone gets hyped up. He's just like this. You can't even call him an underground legend because everybody knows about him. He's the former interim lightweight champion, 8-4 in the UFC. All 4 losses have come to fighters who were either the undisputed champ at one point or interim title holder. Sorry, Jesus Christ. It's been a while, everyone. He was a Division I All-American wrestler at the University of Northern Colorado, and his fights have been described as a car crash for both fighters. Seriously, he hurts himself in this process. It's what he loves. Back in May of 2022, Justin fought then-champ Charles Oliveira. Both began swinging for the fences. Gaethje dropped Oliveira twice. But again, he was smart enough to know, like, once you drop this guy, it doesn't mean dive in there, because he understood the danger of being in Oliveira's guard. So Oliveira kept landing the 2, which is a straight right hand. And after Gaethje landed a combo, Oliveira dropped him with a straight right. Oliveira quickly snatched up a rear naked choke, got the finish. That was back in 2022. Next, he fought Rafael Fiziev. That fight I was super hyped about. That was in March 2023. He got a major decision victory, but the fight was really fun to watch. There's a lot of firework type strikes in the first round. I had Fiziev winning the first round easily. And it just seemed like Gaethje took a little while to get going because he was trying to work more patient. And it showed. He, took that first round off, and then I feel like the second round was really close. I still gave it to Fiziev. The judges saw it the other way, and then in the beginning of the third round, Justin got hurt pretty bad and sort of caught himself. Took over the second half of the round, put it on Fiziev. Fiziev's face was covered in blood. It was a bad look. I think Gaethje stole that round, got the victory. And so that was the last time we saw him fight. He showed a lot of patience in that fight. The fight was important because he fought another striker, and he was able to show that he's not going to just throw everything, just go, nuts anymore. And he also showed, I heard a lot of, that he adopted this mantra, controlled chaos. And he got that, I'm assuming, from Coach Trevor Whitman, who's, amazing coach. And that style used to be sort of kill or be killed, and it looks like it's changed to controlled chaos. That comes with maturity, age, and veteran status. And even with his wrestling accolades, Justin just seems to stick to boxing. That's like his thing, and more likely uses his wrestling to get things back up. Now let's talk about Max Holloway, proud Hawaiian, 25-7 MMA record. He's a legend of the featherweight division. Again, this is a lightweight title fight. So not lightweight title, lightweight bout. And so Holloway's moving up for this one. Holloway is at one point was considered the featherweight GOAT, former champion. He holds the records for most strikes landed in the history of the UFC. That's interesting. So with that comes the volume-based striker type. He was a long-time GOAT of the division, as I said. And he lost 3 fights to the current people who now we consider Alexander Volkanovski the current GOAT of the featherweight division, because Max has fought Alexander 3 times and lost all 3 times. And those are his only losses in the featherweight division since losing to Conor McGregor back in 2013 when Max was only 22 years old. So that's an interesting fact, to be fighting in the same division that long and only losing to somebody recently, and it's the same guy. Just a few people that Max has victories over, because it's an impressive resume. Charles Oliveira, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo twice, Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Yair Rodriguez, and the Korean Zombie, which fucking broke my heart. He won the interim title by beating Anthony Pettis back in 2016 and became the undisputed champ by finishing Jose Aldo the next year in 2017. He won 14 straight in the featherweight division when he was on that run, the one we were talking about. He fought in the lightweight division once for an interim title against Dustin Poirier, but he lost a decision. That was back in 2019. He has a super strong chin, never been KO'd, never even been TKO'd. He's only been finished by submission once, and that was to Dustin Poirier back in 2012 when Max was only 21 years old. Again, volume-based boxer. He considers himself best boxer in the UFC, and you know what? He can claim that. I'm not saying I agree with that. I never really thought about it, but he's up there. Make no mistake, these two guys are going to be going at it. These two guys are nice guys, but they're perfect for this type of fight. Gonna be a banger. Salud. Tapatio, everyone. Figure it out. Drink additive-free tequila. All right, on to the co-main event of the evening and the second title bout, the strawweight title bout between champ Weili Zhang and number 1 contender Yan Xionan. This is the first time that the UFC will have China versus China in a title fight. It's a huge moment for Chinese MMA. Weili Zhang, the champ, first ever Chinese-born champion in the UFC. She's a 2-time strawweight champion. Joined the UFC back in 2018. She started out with a 5-0 run. Her 5th fight was against then-champion and legend Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in March of 2020. This is one of the greatest fights of all time, and if you've ever seen the visuals, it's the one where you see Joanna with big hematomas that make her look not human. Weili Zhang got the split decision, won the victory. Go watch that fight if you haven't. It's incredible. Her next fight was against Rose Namajunas in April of 2021, and that's the fight where Rose landed a head kick and knocked her out. Weili lost the title. They had a rematch in November of 2021, and Rose won that one by split decision. Weili Zhang's only 2 losses in the UFC were to Rose Namajunas in those 2 times. So just a little more of the timeline. Rose lost her title in May of 2022 to Carla Esparza in one of the most boring fights of all time. And Weili fought a rematch against Joanna Jędrzejczyk after losing the split decision to Rose. And Weili landed a spinning back fist and KO'd Joanna. Joanna retired right after that fight. That was sort of like setting her up for... That was a title eliminator type of fight. Weili challenged Carla Esparza for that title in November of 2022. Completely dominated Esparza, took the back and got a rear naked choke. Got her title back. She then fought Amanda Lemos in August of last year. Dominated her for all 5 rounds. Great grappling, great top pressure. Lemos is a world-class striker, but she just really couldn't get her hands much on Weili Zhang. Every time she got close, she got taken down or bullied against the cage. The final striking totals: Weili Zhang 296 strikes to Lemos's 29 strikes. That tells you the story of what happened. Zhang got the unanimous decision. Weili Zhang's style is just, she starts her fights and does a lot of feints and level changes, similar to what we were talking about with Bo Nickal. She's always threatening the takedown because she's kind of has this bull style of takedowns. Once she goes full speed, very sharp, ferocious striking, heavy top game, grueling, bruising top pressure. Once she's on top, it's hard to get her off. She does get hit at distance. I don't know if they've worked that out. She's been training with John Wood at Syndicate MMA and training in I already forgot now. Thailand. There you go. Duh, she's been there, but John Wood's been helping her out a lot, sharpen up a few things. Ultimately, her explosiveness and decision making are what make her great. Again, she's only lost to Rose Namajunas, and that's saying something. Let's move on to Xionan. All right. So Weili was the first ever Chinese-born champion. But Yan was the first female fighter from China to be signed by the UFC, and that was back in 2017, a year before Weili got here. She's 2-2 in her last 4 fights, which is kind of weird for someone getting a title shot for the first time. But, I mean, maybe it's a little slim down there. Maybe that's what's going on. She started her UFC career out 6-0, all wins coming by way of decision. That's interesting. Then in May of 2021, she got dominated on the ground and finished by former champ Carla Esparza. Lost a split decision to Marina Rodriguez, so that was 2 in a row she lost. Then she won a decision against Mackenzie Dern in October of 2022, and most recently fought a legend, Jessica Andrade, in a title eliminator fight to see who would be fighting against Weili, and she got a nasty KO victory over Andrade that set her up for this fight. She fought really long, and she just seemed to have so much more power on her strikes in this fight. She was hitting so hard, and Andrade doing her normal kind of thing where she's just chasing and throwing wild short hooks, and she kept getting caught and finally just dropped her, and that's how she earned her title fight. She does, again, like I said, she fights long and powerful with her strikes, and she seems very angry and vicious. That's why I think this will be a banger. I'm just wondering if Yan has shored up her defensive wrestling because she's going to need it. We'll see what happens. So I think it's going to be a good fight. Kind of a weird fight for UFC 300, I'll be honest, from like the fan standpoint or the hardcore fan. But hey, it's a title fight. I love watching Weili Zhang fight. I love watching Yan Xionan fight. She's very aggressive and mean. It should be a good fight. Now let's get to the main event, the light heavyweight title bout between champion Alex Pereira and number 1 ranked Jamahal Hill. Alex Pereira, one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Love watching him. I love the whole indigenous thing, shooting the arrow. All that's fucking cool. First fighter to win both the UFC middleweight title and the UFC light heavyweight title. He's a former Glory middleweight champ and light heavyweight champ. That's kickboxing. He's the only fighter to ever hold 2 titles in both the UFC and Glory. Pretty big fucking deal. Started his career out at 4-0. The fourth fight in that run was against middleweight title holder and legend Israel Adesanya. That was back in November of 2022. Alex had already beaten Israel twice in boxing, so there was like a little bit of a grudge match going on here. They already had a history, and Alex got a TKO in the 5th round, took the title away. It was a huge deal. I remember loving that because I was an Alex Pereira fan. And then they rematched in April of 2023, and Izzy got a 2nd round KO, kind of made up for that last one. After that, Alex moved up to the light heavyweight division, which is where he is now. He moved up there and won a close split decision victory over former champ Jan Blachowicz, which was interesting because Izzy went up once for an interim title and lost to Jan Blachowicz, but Alex beat him. And after that, around that time is when Jamahal Hill won the title. Actually, a little bit before that, and he ended up relinquishing the title. That's why I was saying in the beginning of this whole video that there's some weird, interesting stuff going on. But Alex got the light heavyweight title shot against Yuri Prochazka, and that was in November. That's when he won the title. He hurt Yuri's legs bad in the first round. Like within 20 seconds, Yuri was already hurt. Alex stayed patient and didn't really go for broke, which is his style. He's very patient. Round 2 begins. Yuri starts landing big shots on Alex. Alex is kind of backing up towards the cage. Yuri pressured Alex against the cage, starts throwing big, wild combos. They're a little wild. And Alex landed his 2-3, straight right to a left hook, caught Yuri. Yuri dropped to his knees and grabbed onto Alex's legs. And while he was there, Alex was landing elbows and punches. And eventually Yuri fell asleep. Not fell asleep. He went to sleep, fell backwards. They stopped the fight. Alex is the champ. Absolute killer with his hands. His striking is next level. You always hear Joe Rogan jerking him off. That's how good he is. He does have one punch KO power. No questions about that, but he's very calm and patient. I think he believes, and I know this, he believes in his power so much in his combos that he stays patient. He's not trying to get the knockout. He knows it'll come. He feels like it'll come. Keeps his hands low. They're kind of like out like this as opposed to being closer to his head, sort of inviting people in to get caught up in the spider web, which is his striking. And then he throws these really interesting short calf kicks that really have devastated almost every opponent he's fought. He hurt Adesanya in the first round of both fights, and he hurt Prochazka in the first round of that fight. Dropped him actually with one of those calf kicks. He doesn't have great grappling. We haven't had to see it a whole lot. We saw it in the Yan fight, and he prefers to use his grappling to get to the feet. Hasn't been submitted yet, so that's a good sign. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited for him in there. And now let's get over to Jamahal Hill so we can kind of explain how this whole process started. Jamahal Hill, former UFC light heavyweight champion. As I said, he never actually lost his title. He had to give it up. He actually chose to give it up. He's 12-1 in MMA. 8 of those fights were in the UFC. 7 of those UFC wins. 7 of those were in the UFC. Oh, man, I wrote that wrong. Sorry. 5 of his wins in the UFC were by either KO or TKO. His only loss in MMA was to Paul Craig back in 2021. That was an interesting fight. Paul Craig is kind of this high-level jiu-jitsu guy. They somehow got to the ground. Craig trapped his arm, and ended up dislocating it at the elbow level. So, like, you just see Jamahal Hill's elbow dangling, and Craig put him in a triangle choke to hold him there. And while he had him in the triangle choke position, and the arm's just wobbling around. Go watch that fight. It's crazy. He just starts landing elbows, a few punches. The ref finally stops the fight, and you could see immediately that he wasn't hurt from the strikes, but his arm was just, useless. So that was his only actual loss in MMA. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that because Alex Pereira doesn't have that type of grappling. So we're not going to see that. Jamahal Hill followed that with a brutal KO of Jimmy Crute. And then he put on a super impressive performance against Thiago Santos in his first main event. Jamahal Hill was able to withstand a lot of trouble when it came to grappling, and he just kept moving forward. Got the 4th round TKO, and that earned him the title fight against then-champ Glover Teixeira, who was also Alex Pereira's mentor and head coach. Jamahal Hill traveled into enemy territory, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to fight for that title. Glover Teixeira was actually 43 years old at the time and ended up retiring after this fight. That's important to know. In the fight, Jamahal Hill survived a lot of grappling, a lot of takedown attempts, a lot of old school techniques from the Weili veteran was using, but he did show a lot of patience. He defended, kept himself out of danger, landed big shots when he couldn't put Glover away. He landed some nasty shots. Glover's face was covered in blood. He hurt him in round 3, couldn't put him away, and Glover actually got a takedown in round 5. Everyone, they're in the crowd, they went nuts because it's like, hey, he might do it, but Jamahal Hill reversed the position and finished strong. The judges all scored it by unanimous decision, 50-44 to Jamahal Hill. After that fight, Jamahal Hill ruptured his ankle in like a charity basketball game, and because it was going to be about a year to recover, he ended up relinquishing his belt, and that's how that fight got made between Alex and Yuri Prochazka. It's because Jamahal gave up the title. So Jamal's coming back heated, very angry, feeling like he was shorted here because he's the real title holder from his perspective. And that's what's going on. Jamahal Hill's an elite level. He has an elite level chin. There's no question about that. And an elite level power in his hands. He throws really long, awkward strikes. Some of them don't really look. I mean, a lot of his striking, to be honest, it doesn't look very technical. But when it lands, I mean, he's putting people out. A lot of people. Very opportunistic striker. When he sees a hole, he goes right for it. And he's got the chin to back it up. So he's always down to be in a firefight. He's always down to, swang and bang, so to speak. Some of his knockouts are nasty. If you see the knockout against Johnny Walker, it is devastating. He usually fights with his hands kind of low, but again, with that kind of chin and you want people to come in, that's what you do. I'm scared to watch this fight. I'm in fear. Someone's gonna get melted. Someone might possibly die. All right. So let's one more little salud for the combatants of this. I appreciate you guys watching. I'm gonna probably make a separate video where I actually make my picks. I mean, I wouldn't trust them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not great at making picks. I'm great at breaking down these fights, and I love watching the fights and kind of just picking through what's going on. But I really appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully this helped you out a little bit so you didn't have to go through like 6 hours of pre-fight interviews and tape and footage and this and that. But thanks for listening. Look out for the next one. Love you.